What is up, player profiler faithful? It's Matty Kiwoom, and welcome to episode 28 of the game plan. Get ready for a magical show. I have not one but two very incredibly special guests joining me, and we are talking a little best ball strategy. I am just way too excited for this episode, so let's not waste another second. It is time to get down to business. So, gang, take out your pen and pads and let's start game planning to win our best ball drafts. Planners, my guests for episode 28 are two awesome analysts and some of my favorite guys in the industry. They are members of the Destination Devy crew, and they are the co-hosts of the Off the Line Fantasy Podcast. That's right, I'm talking about Ike and Gene. What up, guys? How's it going?
Hey, what's going on?
What's happening?
Super pumped to have you guys on. I'm excited to talk a little bit of best ball here. I got to admit, I'm a tad green with best ball. I kind of do it to just pass the time in the offseason, but I want to get more serious. I want to get in the weeds and I want to win. I want to get some cash. I want to go to the expo next year and have some cash on me. So let's talk a little best ball strategies, right? Of course, you got to have that money on it. You got to do it. Yeah. But before we get into it, we got two segments as we usually do here on the game plan. But before we do, I got a little bit of surprise questions for both of you. So how long have you been playing fantasy football? And go ahead and describe your fantasy management style.
Go ahead. You go first, Ike.
So I've been playing fantasy since I think 2007, I believe. And I only remember the year because I had a draft on NFL.com where I had drafted Vincent Jackson over Randy Moss.
The year he went to the Pats?
The year he went to the Pats and the year that he went off and broke the NFL record for receiving touchdowns. So I only remember that year pretty vividly.
Yes.
So that was my first trial by fire experience in fantasy football. But my fantasy management style is, I like to it kind of depends on the year, right? I mean, it just kind of depends on how the previous year went, and if running backs are getting pushed up the board, then you kind of zag, and then if wide receivers are getting pushed up the board, then you kind of zag. So it just kind of depends. But I like to have a lot of wide receiver heavy teams, mostly, especially during redraft. So that's usually my biggest. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me.
And honestly, it's kind of been a through line here with a lot of the guests. It's being fluid in your style. Like the best fantasy gamers aren't rigid to one type of fantasy ideology, nothing like that. But I do love the wide receivers. Me and my buddies, for whatever reason, we used to call them the dragons. You got to have your dragons to take down the village in fantasy. What about you, Gene? How long have you been playing fantasy, and kind of tell us about your fantasy style?
I think I've been playing since in college, probably 2007, 2008, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my first draft, I had LT. It was the year after he went berserk, I believe. And I was mad because I remember the person that had him, he just won. Like it was a cheat code. It just didn't make any sense. And then that's when. So, but my style is, kind of the same as Ike's. I'm a wide receiver guy through and through, but like you said, I know Mike and Adam, when they came on, just other people, you do got to be fluid whenever you're drafting because, when you're drafting against randoms, it's always something. When you're drafting against your, people in your home leagues, you're a little more prepared. You know how to navigate those. But when you're in these random rooms trying to build a best ball team, you definitely got to be fluid in your strategy and building a roster that you like.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. You got to be fluid in best ball.
Got to adapt when necessary. And plus, Gene made a good point. Knowing your league mates, knowing their tendencies, knowing how, maybe they value names over production, you can definitely exploit those weaknesses in your leagues. And we do it every year. Gene and I, we're always pretty much at the top of some of the leagues that we're in together. I usually beat him more than he beats me, but
oh man, so you know what? We might be half a country apart, but we share something in common. We both took down Gene in fantasy leagues. I took him down in the Expo Championship.
Gosh, that dynasty league you did. I forgot you did win that. You did beat me in the finals, man. Damn.
You hate to see it. You absolutely hate to see it.
For real. If you're Gene, but you love to see it if you're us, right? If you're taking him down, we want to be on top.
Damn. I didn't think you were gonna bring that one up.
I wasn't going to. We're talking best ball here. That's a dynasty league, so I wasn't going to. But when Ike throws up the alley, I'm gonna throw it down. I have to.
Fair enough.
Like that D-Wade LeBron picture.
Oh man, we have to recreate that now at the expo. Now I think about okay, so it's something to tally down. Let's go. Okay, I like that. So we are here to talk best ball strategy, and I am so excited to have you guys on because you're very good at in-season analysis. I love listening to Off the Line Fantasy when you're in season because you guys are absolutely sharp. But now you're kind of evolving into the full-fledged full season all year long, and you're adapting a whole bunch of best ball strategies. So I'm super excited to have you come on and tell all of our listeners kind of your best practices and ways they can, take these, put them in their tool bag, and put together some good teams in these best ball leagues and maybe take home a little bit of coin. But before we get really into the weeds of the strategies, I wanted to ask you guys, like, what's your best ball experience and like, how'd you do last year?
Go ahead, Gene.
So last year, I think last year playing a little more underdog best ball. I think that's probably my second. No, actually my third because I did play on DraftKings, but I just like the experience a little bit more on underdog. But last year I probably put in like 20, 25 teams. Let it be like the puppy or the very big one that they do at for like I think it was $500,000 I think this time. I know this year is going to be $1 million total in prizes, but I know one thing I learned putting in those teams is that I wasn't as fluid. You learn year to year.
Yeah.
I think I was kind of rigid in terms of my team build because I was drafting a lot of early running backs and doing a lot of deep diving. And if you're in the Destination Devy Patreon, that's patreon.com/all gas. Had to plug that in real quick.
There it is.
We got a lot of sharp people in there, and they like building spreadsheets or whatnot, and came away with a lot of like different things. If you're in there, then you'll see some of the matrices that Dynasty Berries in there. And one of the things is that I learned is that last year a lot of the teams that advanced, they didn't have wide receivers falling in their flex. It was actually running backs, and they were producing a more higher clip in terms of points per game than your wide receiver or your tight end. So that again goes back to being a lot more flexible when you're in your builds and understanding how the scoring works, especially underdog, which is half point PPR. I know a lot of people, we get caught up in getting a bunch of wide receivers, this and that, but those running backs held you down if you had some good ones or a lot of ones that came in and performed really good very late in the season. I know Ike, he'll get to his story and he'll tell you that some of these running backs, the unexpected running backs, showed up and showed out for him when at the end of the season for him. So that was my experience with best ball with underdog. I like it a lot. I know I'm going to be going in more as we continue the conversation. We can talk about some other things that
For sure.
you might want to implement when you're playing in this year.
So we were talking before the show, Ike, you got a nice little story from last year's best ball. So why don't you go ahead and tell the listeners how well you did last year?
Yeah. And honestly, like I hadn't been playing best ball for that long, maybe like a couple years, 2-3 years, just kind of dabbling here and there. But like last year was like the first year that I kind of, took it serious a lot more. My first draft was, I think June 8th, something along those lines. Like it was relatively late compared to where I'm drafting now, but I was relatively green in best ball. So I think I put in about 30 plus 33 teams total.
So you learn quickly.
Yeah, between the puppy, which is $5, and which is and then between Best Ball Mania, which is $25. So I kind of mixed and matched. But I did pretty well last year in best ball. I placed 7th in the puppy 3. So and that appreciate it.
Pretty good. That's pretty good.
Placed 7th. So I had that particular tournament started with 293,000 people, and then I kept winning, and I kept winning each week. And I was texting Gene. I was like, man, I'm actually in the semifinals now. And then, damn, I'm in the finals now. But for that particular team, that team build was pretty unique. It was running back heavy. But it was basically so with the puppy, it's 18 roster spots versus Best Ball Mania, which is 20 roster spots. So that's one thing to keep in mind with the smaller contest. They have smaller roster sizes.
Mm-hmm.
But with the puppy, my build was 3-8, 3-8-5-2. So 3 quarterbacks, 8 running backs, 5 wide receivers, and 2 tight ends.
Okay.
And my 3 quarterbacks were Jalen Hurts, and we all know Jalen Hurts smashed. Kirk Cousins,
pretty good.
He pretty good, and then Tom Brady. And I'll get to Tom Brady here in a second and how he definitely turned the corner when he needed to.
Man. You guys know I'm a Pats fan, so I'll always love me some Tom Brady. But I'm super excited to have you on, and make sure you stick around. We got a little ad read here, but make sure you stick around because I have 2 of the best, and we are going to get into those best ball strategies.
Hey, it's the Podfather. Now in the off season, I get into baseball, I get into basketball, and my preferred platform to play fantasy sports is Rival Fantasy, because Rival Fantasy has challenges where you can just take a guy and say, hey, this guy's going to score more fantasy points than this guy. They put 2 shortstops together, pick one. Point guards, pick one. Spoiler alert, you should pick Damian Lillard. Or they have the fantasy book where you can pick over, under, and up to 5 guys, and then the more you pick, your potential payout quickly escalates. And finally, I submit a bingo card because you can just go over, under across the board, get your fantasy bingo card set, submit it. I'm not the biggest basketball or baseball expert, but I have a hell of a lot of fun playing fantasy sports on rivalfantasy.com. And the best part is with promo code PLAYER, they refund up to $50 of any losses. So the promo code there is PLAYER on rivalfantasy.com. Go have some fun.
So go have some fun at rivalfantasy.com and use that promo code PLAYER, and you will get yourself a nice little bonus here. In the chat, my man Jason Allwine says that the Tom Brady, the GOAT, was great for overall team morale. Obviously, you got to get the boys going in the locker room to have good performances on the field. But my next question for you, and we'll start with Gene, what are some different strategies to draft like a really good best ball squad?
For me, right now, drafting pre-NFL draft, they have a couple of contests, $10, $5 contests. One thing I've been noticing as I've been drafting this early is I have a tendency of drafting tight ends late, just because, again, when in the Discord, in our underdog room, some of the breakdowns. One of the breakdowns was that when you look at the WARP, the wins over replacement for a player, once you get past tight end 1, tight end 2, they're literally like scoring wise all the same when you go all the way down to tight end 20. So if I'm not getting Kelsey, I'm waiting to round 13, round 14, round 15. And I'm just stacking up like Juwan Johnson, Gerald Everett. If you wait really late, you can get Hunter Henry. People are sleeping on him, in my opinion. So you can get Noah Fant. Like a lot of these tight ends, you get 3 or 4 of them, and I mean you're gonna get spike weeks from somebody. You're just playing a guessing game. I rather take my hits there than spending early first round. Your first 5-6 picks is one of them is Kelsey, or you second or third round you're getting Andrews. I rather spend those on my high warp wide receivers compared to getting a tight end early, and then you're not liking your build. Once you go through it, you're just like, oh, this is like disgusting. I missed out on the top wide receivers. I missed out on top running backs, and I'm reaching for people like Christian Watson, who is a good best ball player, but I don't want to draft him in the 5th round as my second wide receiver. Like you're not going to
pocket and get that guy. You don't want to reach for him.
Trust me, you're not gonna like it when you're looking at him at wide receiver 2. Like it's disgusting. So
and you bring up the tight end position and rookies too. Waiting might be a good practice because there's like 4 or 5 guys that might be productive right away in 2023. So it's smart. Absolutely. What are some of the practices that you like to kind of deploy here to win in best ball?
Yeah, a couple things though. What I've seen early on, just wide receivers kind of dry up pretty quickly.
So for sure.
Like
this is the year that wide receivers are going to zip off the board.
Yeah, the first round, 8 or 9 wide receivers are going off the board. So
every time
you kind of have to start with a top wide receiver to kind of anchor your team, and then look to stack him with a really good quarterback. So for instance, I know Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are going pretty early. So if you get A.J. Brown, let's say, pick 6, pick 7, at least my strategy is to get Jalen Hurts with my next pick because he's going to go pretty early. But it also depends on where your draft position is. If you're later in the draft, then you may have to pivot towards a Jonathan Taylor or a Saquon Barkley to start your team, and then backdoor him with a good wide receiver or whatever's left from that that wide receiver pool. But I like to stack good pass catchers with good quarterbacks. That's one thing that I usually have in mind, especially early on in drafts, and I just let the rest of the draft come to me.
Right. Kind of stay in the pocket, stay fluid. We talked about that in your season-long strategies, but you can use that in best ball, right? Like staying fluid is a good practice in best ball. You don't want to be too rigid. All of a sudden you come away like, man, I really had this strategy I put in place, but it looks like I was too strong with it. I was too kind of put in a box here. And it sounds like both of your preferred strategies is kind of attack the wide receivers early.
Early, and then another thing that I've noticed is once you do attack that early, there's going to be a lot of running back value later in drafts, especially now since we're before the NFL draft, we're past the combine. Pro days are kind of going. One way to get some value later in drafts is to target some of the rookie running backs before you get their landing spots. I've been looking at a lot of Sean Tucker, or Chase Brown or Tyjae Spears, or Kendre Miller, some of those guys to kind of anchor the remainder of my running back builds. So look, those landing spots, they may get pretty damn good draft capital, and you can definitely pair them with some of the other running backs that you draft, and we'll talk about some of those in a second that I'm targeting.
Yeah, so smart to do that. So smart. Gene, anything you want to add there?
Yeah. So like you said, if you're drafting probably 1 through 6. You're probably taking a wide receiver first. You're probably going to start your draft wide receiver. And if you wait like between like round 6 through 9, I mean, they're littered with running backs that are like in that range where they're in their second contract, or, running backs where last year they were getting drafted in the 4th or 5th round. You didn't really feel good about drafting them, but now they're going through 6 through 9 because of, the potential of these incoming running backs. And, they're kind of older and people are just fading them. So people like Miles Sanders, J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, Aaron Jones. These are all guys that are littered within round 6 through 9. I rather wait on all and just gobble some of those in. Again, you get trapped with taking a tight end first, and now you're behind the 8 ball in terms of building out the rest of your roster. I'd rather wait on some of these other guys and spend my early capital on some of these wide receivers.
Yep.
Every year is different, but I mean, let's think back to 2022. Algier taken in the 5th round of the NFL draft, kind of left by the wayside. Isaiah Pacheco taken in the 7th round, kind of left by the wayside. If you took both of those guys, they were going to smash for you at the end of the season because they came on strong at the end. So I like that idea of kind of peppering some late rookies, waiting on the running backs. There's a whole bunch that have depressed value at this time of year. I don't know if that's going to be a consistent narrative each year, but right now it certainly is. So your David Montgomerys, DeAndre Swifts, those are the guys that I have been seeing a lot on my teams in best ball so far. Did either of you guys ever play Clash of Clans a few years ago or even now?
I did not.
So are you familiar with that game?
I am familiar. I remember you used to see those ads all the time.
Yeah. So Clash of Clans is like you build up a village and you build up weaponry and you attack other villages, right? And one of the best ways to attack was getting these dragons. You could get a whole bunch of dragons and they would just run through towns. They would destroy the other village. And I have always looked at the high-end wide receivers as getting my dragons. So if you tune in this show, you maybe heard it before, but if I'm ever talking about my fleet of dragons, it's because I've got a whole bunch of wide receivers that are here to fuck shit up. So I like this strategy. It seems like that's the best way to go about it here, especially one QB. Attack wide receiver, get those dragons, and pick up some of the spaces, stay in the pocket, and get some value later on, because if you're staying fluid, you will find those pockets of value throughout a draft. So like what are some of your thoughts on the best way to start a draft if the wide receivers are taking it? We talked about attacking wide receiver, but let's say you're kind of you've seen a run, you're at the back end of the draft. We kind of mentioned the Jonathan Taylor. Are you going running back in this situation, or are you willing to reach in the 2nd round to get that wide receiver to pair with a Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, something like that.
No, I mean, look, I think in the first couple of rounds, if some of those wide receivers are gone, I mean, you'll still have some decent value at running back. So like Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, some of those guys are still on the board. I would probably start there.
Yeah.
It's important not to panic, right? I think a lot of people, whenever they have, certain things not go their way, they panic, they reach, they have like a very questionable team build when it's all said and done, because they reached and they chose like, the person that was basically at the top of the ADP, right? They just look at the rankings and say, okay, he has the highest ADP. I'm going to draft this guy. And there's really no rhyme or reason why you need to do it, because it may not be your best bet in that moment in time. So I think it's important not to panic, and I would probably just pivot towards the best available running backs, especially if there's pretty good value there. Jonathan Taylor, I think he's going to be a guy that I target pretty frequently, especially if the wide receivers are gone. Towards the end of the back half of the first round or early second round.
Right. And Gene, have you started any teams going maybe running back, tight end, running back that you like the team build, or are you like, I need my Dragons at the top of the draft?
No. So the last 3 drafts I've been in the 10th, 11th, 12th spot, and I've always preferred doing the running back because it's always Jonathan Taylor's always there, Saquon's always there, Bijan's always there, Austin Eckler's always there. So I mean, I like that build compared to like going after like Garrett Wilson and Amon-Ra. Like it feels better starting off with those 2 monster running backs than those wide receivers, in my opinion.
So pivoting is not it's not a death sentence. You can pivot and still come away with a team build that you like. We've talked about team building strategies that we like. Now let's talk about what we hate. What is the worst way to start a best ball team, in your opinion, Gene?
Tight end in the first and second round. Like I said, like I did it twice. I stacked it with Mahomes and Kelsey, and I did not like the rest of my team. I felt like I was behind the 8 ball. I kept picking players. I was like, I like them, but I felt like I had to like kind of get them around too early because when those players weren't going to come back to me. And plus, when you draft like a tight end first, I feel like you lose your leverage in the other positions because you're playing catch up. Like I said before, that warp after Kelsey and maybe Andrews is like a dramatic like drop, and they're all clumped the same, like in terms of like percentage of points difference between each other. They're so close together that there's no point for me to go draft TJ Hockenson in the 4th when I can spend that 4th round pick on a wide receiver like Chris Godwin or Mike Evans or somebody else like that. So
DJ Moore.
I knew it was coming. DJ Moore. No. Exactly. I don't want to lose my leverage in these other positions if I'm going to spend early on a tight end. Like I just like I like my build better when I draft tight end late than picking early.
Yeah, I mean, imagine all the teams that drafted Andrews in the 2nd round last year, and they were like, "Oh, look at these chumps!" And then the first part of the season, you're like, "Oh, baby, this is it." Yeah. No. All of a sudden, he falls off a cliff, and you're fucked. You don't really have the wide receivers there that you could have had in the 2nd round. Anything you want to add there, Ike, in terms of what are your worst favorite starts to a best ball draft?
Yeah, this is actually the worst. I agree with Gene. Starting with tight end is not really advantageous. You're playing catch up, but also towards the end of drafts, like and basically ending your roster with like 4 tight ends or 4 quarterbacks, because you lose out on a lot of value, especially late. You can lose out on a guy like Jerick McKinnon that basically saved a lot of fantasy seasons last year. He turned up. He had there was a stretch where he had 9 touchdowns in a 5-game span. He was actually on that best ball team that I mentioned that I did pretty well in. You lose out on a guy like Tyler Algier. He ended up having one of the more quiet 1,000-yard seasons that I can remember, but he had a strong finish to the 2022 season for the Falcons. So you lose out on guys like that in the later rounds that you can potentially that can propel you to the next round and potential high finishes in these drafts.
Yeah, if you're going to use dart throws at the end, you don't want to use them on tight ends because they have the lowest floor. I mean, you could
The
walk
lowest floor.
I mean,
Absolutely.
they
Yeah.
could absolutely sink your bottom of your roster. As the opposite is true for running backs and receivers. You could get a guy that's like, he's not going to do anything, and then 2 injuries later by week 9, he's smashing for his team. Where tight end, you could literally piss away your last 3 or 4 picks if you just wait till the end. So you guys are saying, don't take him in the beginning. Don't wait on him till the very end. Pepper him in there in the middle and try to come away with, I don't like that TJ Hockenson disrespect, Gene, that you did, because I love Hockenson this year, but I do understand what you're saying. Fade kind of the early tight ends. Pepper in your Dallas Goederts, your Pat Fryermuths, these guys who can pop, give you spike weeks. I like that. I like that approach a whole lot. It's definitely going to change the way I look at best ball. We're gonna tackle one of my best ball drafts that I did with the two of you later on in the show, so stick around for that. You might rip me up because I did kind of do some of the no-nos that we talked about, but I did practice some of the good stuff that we've talked about. Now we've talked about big picture strategy. We've talked about what positions. Now let's talk about some of the players. So, like, what are some of the players you're targeting in the middle part of the drafts?
J.K. Dobbins is by far my number one player that I'm targeting in 2023. Second year removed from the ACL tear. That's usually the year where you bet on these running backs, especially if history is any indicator. Last year, Saquon Barkley, he was like one of my number one player in all my drafts, all my redraft leagues, all my best, a lot of my best ball leagues. Think back to Dalvin Cook in 2019. He had his first breakout year, coming off of the ACL tear. Second year, and then we know about Adrian Peterson, but J.K. Dobbins, even last year towards the end of the year, I mean, he was still number 2 in juke rate and number 3 in breakaway run rate. So, and this was him just kind of getting back up to speed and ramping back up. But I think now he has a full offseason to get going. He is like by far my number one player, and then Jameson Williams is close behind. J-Mo is close behind. Again, him second year removed from an ACL tear. He was just ramping up for the Lions offense last year. Showed some explosive plays towards the end of the season. So he's pretty going on a pretty good value. And then DeAndre Swift. I'm still team DeAndre Swift. I still believe he's my guy. He's one of my guys. And then especially in best ball and underdog, running backs, half PPR, they're more advantageous. Especially a guy like that can break the game open at any given moment in time. He's going in like the 5th or 6th round. I think right now he's like RB20 or RB21. His value is plummeting because of David Montgomery signing there, but I still think he has a lot of value. And then just a couple more. Cam Akers, second
Cam Akers, yep.
Second season post Achilles tear. Again, he was also on my squad that I had did really well.
He finished strong too last year, man.
Had a lot of strong running backs that just clicked at the right time, right? So Cam Akers, and then Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson has a full offseason. Will have a full offseason under his belt. He was a little rusty last year. We did not see that top 5 talent at all in 2022, but I think this year now he added Elijah Moore. Or the Browns added Elijah Moore, my guy, another one of my guys. And I'm going to be targeting a lot of Brown stacks. He also has Amari Cooper.
That's my guy. Amari's my guy.
Who continued to show he was a number 1 receiver despite all the haters saying that he's not. So Deshaun Watson has Cooper, Peoples-Jones, Elijah Moore to throw the ball to, and a full offseason to get going. So I like a lot of those guys.
The Browns, they keep telling us what they want to do. They give Deshaun Watson over $200 million guaranteed. They keep bringing in wide receivers. They want speed. They're not even done after Elijah Moore. They're still in on other receivers. They want to let him cook. I absolutely love that. One thing about DeAndre Swift I want to highlight before we get to your favorite targets here, Gene. He is a best ball. He is the Wolverine of best ball. He was tailor-made, engineered in a lab for best ball. 2 of his best weeks last year. In week 17, where he had 27.7 fantasy points, he had a 35.7% snap share. And in week 13, he had 21.1 fantasy points. He was running back 4. that week, he only had a 51.4% snap share. So for everyone who's panicking that David Montgomery is going to be a volume guy, he could absolutely be that. But DeAndre Swift is so electric, you're going to get those spike weeks. And getting him 5th, 6th, 7th round as we see his ADP fall, man, great practice. Love that call. Gene, who are some of your targets here in the middle part of the draft?
I mean, it's funny. Me and Ike didn't even like discuss who we were gonna go after, like who we were gonna talk about, and this dude named like half of them at least.
You guys should start a podcast together. I think that'd be. You guys seem like you would link up well. I think you guys do a show together. Maybe on Destination Devy, they're a great network.
Man.
Maybe you should do that.
They are a great network. Maybe we should. I'll talk to you after the show, Ike.
Yeah. My people will get with your people. My people will get with your people.
Yeah, you're
exactly.
people calling people. Yeah, well, you should make this happen. I think we should make it happen.
So my first one on my list was Deshaun Watson. Again, this will be his full, like his first really good full year of like knowing he's gonna be playing any and every game that he doesn't get hurt in.
Mm-hmm.
You add in Elijah Moore, another year in the system. You get rid of. I mean, you got just Chubb in the backfield. You still got Njoku. Like I think he's set up to really flourish this year. And I've been every draft that I've placed that I've had an opportunity to get him, I've gotten him. So that's my number one. So I've waited, get him as my first running quarterback, and I feel good about it. The next person you're gonna like, Mac Jones, very late in best ball drafts. So if I start out a draft and I go early on quarterback, so like Mahomes or Allen, you don't need to go and get Cousins. You can wait. Like these guys don't get hurt. They're going to be producing at a high level. They're top of the chain in terms of quarterback scoring. So you don't need to fill in a second quarterback in round 10. You can wait to round 14, round 15, go dabble in some Mac Jones. You get a year where you get Bill O'Brien, a great offensive coordinator. You get whoever the trash was last year calling plays. You get a real professional now. Let's get him back to how he was his rookie season. You added Mike Gesicki. I don't know what, for whatever that's worth. He's athletic, just like Jonnu Smith. I think overall the setup is better for Mac Jones to be a little bit better, and he'll be in filling spots. Like when you have your bye weeks, I think he'll be able to produce very well. You got your second year with Thornton. He'll be able to take out the top off the defenses if he stays fully healthy. You got Juju that's playing in the slot. I mean, they're interchangeable with Jacoby Myers. So for me, I've been targeting Mac Jones late. If I started off one of my early with one of these very high-end quarterbacks, I've been filling my roster with Mac Jones, and I think he should be pretty good this year, honestly. My next person, another running back that's going kind of late that I think people are sleeping on is Samaje Perine. You can get him in like the 10th, 11th round. You haven't heard a peep about Javonte Williams at all, which is really weird. So if you've listened to our last pod, Ike, where you talked about how he shredded every LCL in his knee, and
every CL,
anything that keeps your knee like this is now like it came.
His knee blew up.
You haven't heard a word about his rehab, so I feel like they're going to be leaning on Samaje pretty early in the season. If you saw, you can go down a list of running backs that after their first year after tearing their ACL, they're not really good. Like they don't perform. So
Dobbins
this is
year.
this is why they brought in Samaje Perine. Everybody knows that he's a solid running back. I think early in the season he's gonna get an opportunity to take a lot of the snap share. So I want a piece of him. So that's something I've been targeting. Another running back. It's funny that I like wide receivers, but I keep talking about late round running backs. Damian Harris.
Oh, love that.
I know last year he was ass. He didn't really do much. He was hurt. Ramondre took his spot, took his chain and didn't give it back to him. So Damian gets to be the early down running back, goal line running back for the Bills. Somebody that they missed last year when they had Devin Singletary and whatever else they tried to, and they just used Josh Allen to run the ball, even though they didn't want him to run. He still ran the ball actually because They didn't trust anybody else. Now
Mhm.
now you got a big hammer, someone that doesn't go down easy, doesn't fumble. So I believe that he'll be able to turn around this season and probably get over double-digit touchdowns like he did in 2021. And I mean, it goes without saying, one of the wide receivers I love so much early in drafts, if I get an early pick, is Stephon Diggs, man. Just
Oh,
as long
you
as they
guys are
keep
singing it to me
as
right
long
now.
as long as long as
Diggs, Cooper. Oh,
yeah,
baby.
as long as they keep the wide receiver core kind of similar to how it is now, he's gonna eat again, man. Like it's not even that's a dragon I gotta have in my
Yes.
in my chamber, man. So one more person that I think that I want to talk about is Diontae Johnson, another wide receiver that's going in these like 7th, 8th round. I know last year was kind of a bummer because he had hella
No
targets
touchdown.
like every other year, but didn't
No
score
touchdowns. Yeah.
no touchdowns.
Yeah.
His yards per catch or yards per attempt was really low because Kenny Pickett sucks. But it'd be another
Small
another year.
hands. Small
Yeah,
hands.
small hands. He'll have another year in the offense. I pray that they do something about this offensive line, but I think regression has to turn in his favor in terms of scoring touchdowns. So that's somebody that I think people are sleeping on because he's a high target guy, just didn't score any touchdowns last year.
And the touchdown regression is real. Let's think about Miles Sanders. I know it's a different position, but it's a similar situation where he had 0 in 2021, has 11 in 2022. Now, will Diontae have 11 receiving touchdowns? No. But if that number pops up to 6 or 7, you could that's some value there. Absolutely.
I'd set the over under, to like 6.5, 7.5.
Yeah, I think that's a good mark, and I think given his ability to get catches in PPR formats, like that's absolutely something you're going to want to target for some value. Here in the chat, we got Fantasy Football Garage. Is the 6th round too early to take DeAndre Swift in best ball?
Nope, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I don't. Sixth round, like that's value right there, in my opinion.
So I don't think it's too early, but it's interesting that he's going the 6th round and David Montgomery is going 2 rounds later than him. And we're all projecting that David Montgomery is probably going to be the 1st and 2nd down back. And they're going to probably use Swift similar to they did last year where he gets some of that work. They'll use him some of the 3rd down areas also. And I just think that their ADP should probably be closer together. We'll probably see it once we get closer and closer to the draft.
They'll level out, and I think they'll go around the same range. I think David Montgomery is currently RB 25, 24, 25.
Something like that.
And then DeAndre Swift is like RB 20, RB 19.
Yeah.
So it's going to start like they're going to basically be close together I think by the end of the summer.
And you also have to factor in where we are in the calendar.
Yeah.
The 6th round of DeAndre Swift, he gets traded. You're looking at a 1st, 2nd round guy. So, I mean, getting him in the 6th, 7th round, that's absolute value there, no doubt about it. We talked about some targets. Now, Ike, tell me about some players you're absolutely fading in best ball, guys you just don't no part of.
Well, this first one's going to shock you guys. Well, maybe not. Maybe Gene's probably not going to shock you, but I'm fading Breece Hall. I'm fading Breece Hall.
I don't hate that. I don't hate that in best ball. I don't hate it at all.
Love the talent, love the player, but we talked about this ad nauseum. First year coming back from the ACL tear, he tore his ACL in October, like late October.
Something like that.
So I don't think he's going to be up to speed. I'm actually going to be targeting Michael Carter in later rounds in best ball because he's going to be getting a lot of work, a lot of carries, hopefully early on. And he can give, and again, Michael Carter, another guy, was on my team that was successful in best ball.
It's crazy when a guy performs and you get some money from that performance. You're like, I'm taking you every year, my friend.
Yeah, but this time, it makes sense, right? I mean, he's while they're ramping Breece Hall back up, I mean, Michael Carter is probably going to be the starter. But another guy that I'm fading, and Gene, you're going to like this one, Brian Robinson. I am fading the shit out of him. He is just a guy. We've talked about it on our pod. I don't get why the Washingtons. I'll never call them the Commanders. The Washingtons like this guy so much. I mean, he's his yards per touch, 4.0. That's 53rd in the NFL. Breakaway run rate, number 46 in the NFL. Yards created per touch, 47th in the NFL. Like the guy is just he's not efficient when he touches the ball. He's not, yards created, number 34 in the NFL. true yards per carry, number 56, and like I can keep going. And he's going in the RB20, like right around the same range as David Montgomery. No, stop it. Just stop it.
He's
but
the definition of a volume clogger.
Volume clogger, no spike week potential. And in best ball, you're looking for upside. You're looking for spike weeks. And where is Brian Robinson going to give you spike weeks? I think people drafting him, you're just drafting you're begging to lose. I don't think any championship rosters or any winning rosters are going to have Brian Robinson on there. Can probably guarantee. I feel like that's a safe bet.
Certainly a safe bet. That offense does not fire at the rate it would have to get a guy like that 17 touchdowns. That's what we're looking at for him and have a true outliers here. LeGarrette Blount, Jamal Williams type of season. I don't see that in the range of outcomes for the Washingtons. I'm going to use that from now on. I like that a whole lot. I just picture like the powdered wig at the front of the boat, just like the Washingtons. Now, if you are allowed spike weeks and fantasy points for awesome walkouts after getting shot in the ass, that many men walkout was absolutely awesome, but if you don't get fantasy points for that, I'm fading Brian Wilson. Love that as well.
They don't give no awards for that.
No, I mean, well, should you show your players that on your squad to get them fired up? Yeah, absolutely.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
That was pretty damn cool.
It was cool.
But you ain't getting fantasy points for that. So, Gene, who are some guys you're fading? Guys you don't want on your best ball rosters?
This is only at ADP. This isn't just fade period. Like, I don't like them at all. I don't like their price. I don't like Khalil Herbert where he's going compared to the Diontae Foreman because I think Foreman's going 40 spots after Khalil. And I'm just like, I know a lot of people like Khalil Herbert. They like what he showed.
Very efficient.
He's always hurt. They don't trust him to be the guy. Otherwise, they wouldn't have brought in somebody that was another person that's, he's kind of a volume runner, but you can trust him to take, take 15, 20 carries in Diontae Foreman. So
Spider-Man meme, basically.
Yeah, basically. Basically.
And they gave him money. Sometimes the franchises tell us what they want to do by, following their money.
Yeah. Yeah. If they believed in him, then they wouldn't have paid money for him. They could have got somebody cheap in the draft. So I don't want Khalil Herbert at the price that he's going right now. I've already talked about him already. TJ Hockenson.
Tune in next week, guys.
So here's the thing. We know he's gonna produce. That was Cousins' guy when they brought him in. Right away, he produced. I just don't want to spend, an early 4th round, end of the 3rd for TJ, man. I can't do it. But I get it though. He killed last year. I can't lie. I had him on a couple teams, and those teams took me pretty far in the playoffs. But I can't do it at the price that he's going for. Another person that this one hurts because I like this player a lot. All his peripherals say that he's gonna smash. Another person I can't do it as is Kyle Pitts, man. His numbers, like his target share, even though he didn't play that many snaps, his target share was 30%. Targets per route run was like over 30%. Like just elite numbers. Is just the quarterback, bro. Like I can't.
Yeah.
I'm gonna spend a 5th round pick. I'm gonna spend a 5th round pick when he got with Ritter or Tyler Heineke. They're throwing the ball. I mean. And then you got Arthur Smith on top of that. You already can't trust him. So I can't do it, bro.
It's pretty risky to take Kyle Pitts. But just kind of like the other side of that, he was going in the third round last year. He is going at a bit of a discount. He's going in the 6th now. So
yeah, you're right.
You're getting a 3-round discount on a guy that just had 30% target share and 30% targets per route run last year in that offense.
Yeah.
So that would make a case for me to target him, but I get your trepidation. I get why you wouldn't want to.
Trepidation, great word, by the way. Like great word. Love that word. Good word. $50
Let's just say, but
my lexicon on point, man.
Hey,
damn, lexicon! You're gonna follow trepidation with lexicon? And this is about to be the best show ever.
No, but it's early, so this could change by the time we get closer to the regular season and things start leveling out. You get the real ADP of these rookies, where they're going, their landing spots. So just right now, I can't do it. And also these running backs that are just strictly 3rd down pass catchers, I don't want them on my teams at all. So people like Chase Edmonds, Jerk McKinnon, if and land where he lands, if he just uses a third down back and pass catching back, I don't want him because it's half point PPR and you're hoping that they get, opportunities and they're going to become far in between. Nah, bro. Like more times than not, you're not going to get any production. Like even if they're on your roster, I don't want to take a 0. And most of the time, those guys are not going to really produce anything to even potentially make your lineup. So I'd rather just pass on those builds of players.
I just want to say one thing about Pitts. We're actually going to talk more about the Pitts draft when we break down this best ball roster that I just pulled up. But another thing I want to touch upon is those satellite backs. I think a lot of people get enamored with the PPR formats and they're like, oh, this guy gets catches, it's cheap fantasy points. But they're not getting 7 catches. We're talking about 4, 3. Yeah. We're still talking about touchdown dependent guys if the volume's not there. 3 catches for 30 yards. That's not jack shit if you don't get the volume. I mean, you're still not getting a whole lot of value in PPR, and then a half point PPR. Yeah, I agree. I think we've gotten to the point where, as a community, as a fantasy community, we've gotten a little bit too excited about these satellite guys. But even when you look at how it plays out, if there's no volume attached to the receiving or rushing, you're still looking at minimal fantasy points and you're still looking at that needing touchdown. So I think it's a great point to bring up. So that's going to wrap up the first segment, some of the big picture strategies in best ball. I hope each and every one of you listeners can take that, put it in your tool bag and start drafting some best ball teams and use those strategies to absolutely put yourself in advantage and give yourself a chance to take home some cash like Ike did last year. Now, boys, are you ready to break down my roster here in the second segment?
Yeah, let's do it.
Don't be gentle. It's okay. You can, if you hate certain things, you can absolutely say it. You don't have to be, you don't have to be cautious of my build here. So if you look at what I got going on, I started with Pat Mahomes. Okay. We talked about not going quarterback early. Well, I broke that right off the bat, but I did get David Montgomery and I did get DJ Moore. My man, Kyle Pitts is on this roster. So
our man.
Our guy. That's true. Our guy, DJ Moore. So, Gene, what are your initial thoughts on this team build?
I mean, you got Patrick Mahomes, and then you just waited for a quarterback later in the draft. So I respect that. You waited for one of the guys that I've been in rookie drafts that I've been targeting with my first or second pick, Anthony Richardson, and then you also got Will Levis. I mean, 2 probably high ceiling, very, 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 very low floor, depending on if and when they play. So I get it. I probably would have drafted one of these guys and got like a veteran, somebody like not even a veteran, but maybe even somebody like I said, Mac Jones.
Instead of waiting so late, taking something kind of like the end part of the middle. As opposed to
in between like this, the pick that where you got A Rich and Will Levis, you could get Mac Jones probably like 2 rounds earlier than Will Levis, and you would have been good. So, but I don't mind it. Like again, Patrick Mahomes, he's not gonna get hurt. Like if he does, he's still gonna play. How many times have we seen him get hurt and he still plays through a high ankle sprain when nobody plays through a high ankle sprain? So, I respect what you did at the quarterback position. Running backs is cool. I see you had to plug in the New England guys.
And James Robinson. James Robinson is just one of my favorite players. I love James Robinson. I even have his card right here.
Okay, I can respect it.
So I respect you doing that. I don't know what Devin Singletary is gonna do. For me, I've been fading rookies so far in my drafts, but I understand getting rookie running back late because that's usually when rookie running backs turn up is the end of the season. So I respect it. But I don't mind the running back room, man. You got Najee, who's he's volume. He's going to get all the touches in the backfield. So, and then AJ Dillon usually turns up late in the season also.
Yep.
So, I respect it. I don't mind the running back room.
Okay.
Tight end room.
I like that. I like to hear this.
Yeah. Tight end room is cool. Like, again, like somebody I'm fading is Kyle Pitts, but again, like this is right where he's getting drafted and all the peripherals show that he's good. So I don't mind it. And then Pat Freiermuth, somebody that second half of the season did a lot of good work. I know we talked about Diontae Johnson not really scoring any touchdowns, but Pat Freiermuth, he was one of those guys that was scoring. a lot of points towards the end of your season. So I like it. And then Jelani Woods, he got hurt last year, didn't he? Towards the end of last year.
Yeah, he's had a couple touchdowns. He showed some promise.
Yeah, he
but
did.
What I want to say about Kyle Pitts, I kind of teased it a few minutes ago, because I took Pitts and because the uncertainty around his production in 2023, I felt obligated to pepper in a late tight end and somebody a little bit higher like Fryermuth to kind of give me a little bit of insurance. So I don't know how much I like that now in retrospect, having to use almost a pick around 100. I had to actually reach according to ADP on Fryermuth because I'm uncertain about Pitts. So we talked about it in the last segment, and now you're seeing it in practice how Pitts can truly kind of screw your team build.
Yeah. But it makes sense why you double back with Pat Fryermuth, somebody that's, that's one of the probably top 3 passing options in a okay offense. So it makes sense for Kyle Pitts. That's high ass floor and a low ceiling as we saw last year. So I get it.
Mm-hmm.
In the wide receiver room, I see you started off with Amon-Ra. Okay, somebody I like a lot. DJ Moore, the people's champ. Kadarius Toney. I want to like him because I know the Kansas City wide receiver room is very barren. I don't know what they're going to do about it, but it makes sense. This is definitely a high upside because we've already seen them talk about reports that they're going to, give him and some more opportunities or whatnot. So it could potentially work out for you here. I'm not sure if I would have took the chance on Kadarius, but it makes sense. You stack them with Mahomes, so it makes sense. Cortland Sutton, good pick. I like Cortland, even though you keep hearing that they want to trade him, but they really don't. They just want to try to finesse somebody for a first-round pick. They're not getting it.
Nobody's going for that asking price.
Yeah, I keep seeing that Judy is way more likely to be moved than Sutton.
Yeah, and he's not even getting a first-round pick from anybody. So
yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
So, what are your initial thoughts here on this roster?
Yeah, so starting at quarterback, I don't like the Mahomes pick at 11 because ADP is 19th. That seems like a huge reach. There's value there, as we talked about earlier in the show. There's probably Saquon Barkley. There's probably Jonathan Taylor there. There's probably a really good receiver there still available. I would have pivoted there and then maybe taken like a Justin Fields in round 3 to pair him with DJ Moore. That probably would have been my the pivot that I would have gone.
Okay.
But based on how the roster turned out, I guess it's fine. You were able to stack Mahomes with Toney.
Don't take it lightly. If you don't like it, tell me. It's okay.
It's fine. It's okay. I mean, there's potential.
I would rather you say you hate it than say it's fine.
Nah, yeah, I don't hate it, but my personal opinion, I don't hate it. I would have preferred certain areas to be a little bit better.
Right.
But like the Mahomes pick, I flat out don't like that pick. But based on how the rest of the roster turned out, I mean, again, you stacked him with Toney. The running back room is cool. Najee Harris gets a lot of volume. David Montgomery, we've talked about, he's going to be shooting up draft boards as offseason goes along. But the one wild card in your running back room that you really need to pay attention to, that we all need to pay attention to, is Antonio Gibson.
Oh yeah,
at pick 131, because I think he's in for a smash year. I think the Washingtons probably took stock of what happened in the 2022 season and maybe thought of how they can be more explosive. And how can you be more explosive? You give the most explosive guy on your team the ball more, not Brian Robinson, who I just ran off of his metrics pretty pathetic as a running back.
Yeah. So
I think Antonio Gibson in his final year in Washington is gonna have a pretty good year. So he's going this late in drafts, and he can definitely end up smashing. Kyle Pitts basically going at ADP. I'm more so on the side of preferring Kyle Pitts there, because again, you're still getting a 3-round discount versus what he was last year,
right?
And he disappointed you greatly last year. So now a lot of fantasy managers are kind of scared off by the Arthur Smith offense, and they should. We don't trust Arthur Smith. He was giving Michael Pruitt and Parker Hesse routes over Kyle Pitts,
and they brought in Jonnu Smith, his former
and they brought in Jonnu
player.
Smith, and they took on his terrible contract. His contract is bad.
It's bad,
and they still took them on. So I hope that he's brought in as a blocker, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's running routes over Kyle Pitts too, based on how Arthur Smith's tendencies. But You got our guy DJ Moore.
For
Love
the
it.
brand. I got
For
DJ
the
Moore for the
brand.
brand.
For the brand. For the brand. And Amon-Ra at 14. I'm not really feeling Amon-Ra that high because I like Jameson Williams a couple rounds later because I think that's a better value, and I think Jameson Williams is gonna smash. He's got a 99th percentile 40-yard dash and a 4.30. Like he is going to like he's if there's a definition of a best ball receiver, I mean it's Jameson Williams. It's Jameson Williams. He's got all the spike week potential. Mega producer at Alabama. So I think he's going to smash this year, and I would probably prefer another guy at 14 over Amon-Ra St. Brown. But overall, the roster is fine. It's fine.
I gotta say too, after I didn't really have a way to articulate my thoughts on this team after I drafted it. But after talking to you, I feel like I do have exactly what I need to say. I think it's worse than fine. I don't like this team. I don't like this build. And it started at the top. And we talked about early in the show. Taking Mahomes here gave me no leverage throughout the entire draft. If you look at these players, where I took them, I had to reach on almost every single one of these picks. I continuously had to reach. Look at Kadarius Toney, almost 20 picks ahead of ADP. I had to take Amon-Ra pretty much at ADP, but that's a whole lot of risk that I'm taking on because there's some new factors like J-Mo being there all season long. Taking Kyle Pitts at 62 made me kind of target Freiermuth around pick 100 when I still could have got a productive player at wide receiver or even running back. And then you look at even all of my running backs, I had to reach almost every single bit to make sure that I was protecting those positions. I was having enough production possibility in those positions because I took quarterback so early. And the fact of the matter is, Anthony Richardson, he won't outscore Mahomes at all. But if he's on a team where they expect him to run a ton and he puts together, I'm not saying Justin Fields 2022 exactly, but something in that ballpark. Hell, I could have waited a whole bunch of rounds at quarterback, taken kind of a safe floor, Kirk Cousins, something of that nature, and then peppered in my Will Levis, Matthew Stafford. Exactly. I could have taken something that was boring but safe and then peppered in those two rookies late and still got myself those spike week possibilities. But instead, I went with what I wanted to be a high ceiling, high floor quarterback. I wanted to pair him with Kelsey, missed out on that, which led me to reaching on Kadarius Toney by 20 picks. So after doing, I sent you guys a few rosters that I put together, and I'm glad we talked about this one because I think this one has the most flaws in it. I think this is the worst one I drafted, and it's because I took Mahomes so early.
It does have the most flaws, but at the same time, there were ways to save this roster, especially like in the certain rounds, like, pick 35, pick 30, around pick 35, 38, I would have probably preferred you get Fields instead of Mahomes. And then if you got at 11, you would have gotten Barkley, you would have gotten Jonathan Taylor, you would have started your team, Jonathan Taylor, and then you would have had David Montgomery and then AJ Dillon. And then, what I'm saying? Like, there's ways to save 100%. It. And then instead of like, I honestly, like, I don't hate the Anthony Richardson and Will Levis on the back end because they're going to play by like week 5, right? We see it every year. Rookie quarterbacks play pretty early, and if you saw Will Levis's pro day, I mean, he just absolutely like scorched it, right?
He could chuck it.
Yeah.
He can chuck it.
So he's probably going to be the Colts pick at 3 because they're going to probably trade up with the Cardinals and they're going to probably take Will Levis.
Him in.
They're going to lock him in. Anthony Richardson's probably a top 10 pick. He's going to play early wherever he goes, and he has probably the highest ceiling of any quarterback in the draft based on all of his physical tools. So he's going to be on the field pretty early. So you have a lot of upside with those guys. But to your point, probably would have had a safe floor guy and maybe left one of those rookies off, like a safe floor guy like Matthew Stafford, like I mentioned, who I think that's another guy that I'm going to be targeting late in best ball draft because he's got a healthy Cooper Kupp. Potentially Allen Robinson if he stays, and then you got Van Jefferson, who's a good best ball receiver, and then Tyler Higbee. So that offense is still 2 years removed from winning the Super Bowl. I mean, they're still there, right? So I think there's opportunity with Matthew Stafford, but outside of that, I mean, there was ways to save this roster. Just a couple of picks here and there would have changed the dynamic.
Yeah, I totally regret the quarterback early. And Cody Carpenter, he's in the chat. He said, drafting upside with AR and Uncle Levy. Yeah, absolutely. But then I shouldn't have taken Pat Mahomes that early. If I was willing to take the upside at the end of the draft, I shouldn't have gone so quarterback heavy at the top. And like I said, I was targeting the Kelsey Mahomes stack. I think I would have liked my team even less had I done that, because now we're talking about pushing everything else back. I wouldn't have had a chance at Amon-Ra or Harris or anything like that. So, yeah. So, moral of the story, 1 QB, absolutely do not get aggressive at quarterback or tight end. Pepper in those wide receivers, those running backs, and get those values in the middle part of the draft at QB and tight end. Gene, any last-minute thoughts on this roster before we wrap up?
Nah, I mean, even at the end, like I didn't even notice like the Adam Thielen and the Shenault. I mean, I know Chenault's a Dallas guy, he's a Dallas guy, but I think we passed on him. But like y'all said before, I didn't even notice that Mahomes was the first pick. I just looked at the players.
He was my first pick off the board at 11.
Yeah. Like you said, it's okay. You could have did some things different, but again, it's best ball, man. That's why you can make about 30, 40 of these before the season starts, and you'd be good. This is kind of portfolio approach in terms of doing these type of tournaments. So you live and you learn.
Thank you. Yep. And guys, can you still be my friends even though I drafted a terrible best ball team?
Of course. Everybody's done it.
I got a couple of terrible best ball teams too. So
yep.
Ike, any last minute thoughts on this roster?
No, I mean that's basically it. Again, the Antonio Gibson, man, I feel like that's going to be it's going to end up being a pretty good value pick, even though it seems like it's a reach based on ADP. Him going that late, I would imagine he's going to be moving up the draft boards throughout the offseason, throughout the summer. Because I don't really see that that pick 131 range holding as much as it is. So yeah, I really like the Antonio Gibson pick, but again, my thoughts are the same on the quarterback. Probably could have gone somewhere else early, and then just a couple flips here and there with other players would have saved this roster from being just fine to pretty damn good and potentially competing.
And I also like the fact that you started saying that we all do it. And you make me feel better about myself that we all have these moments of or a lapse of judgment in terms of these best ball drafts. But it's okay. I'll learn from you guys. I'm going to take this episode to heart and absolutely try to come back, and get some other drafts put together. And then I'll come back to you and I'll present some better teams to you guys down the road so we can make sure that, not all was lost on this horrible, horrible team. So that's going to wrap up episode 28. Ike, Gene, please tell all the listeners where they can find you on social, where they can find your content and all that good stuff.
You can find me on Twitter at Fantasy Genes. That's GENES. You can follow our official Twitter handle Off the Line FF. You can we're funny. We always posting something about Dallas or just anything wild that we see. We're posting something. So I think we're a good follow. Also, if you follow either one of our pages, you'll be able to see our underdog promo link. Since we're under Destination Devy, we're being sponsored by Underdog this coming season. So if you're not signed up with Underdog, you can sign up using our promo code OTLFF. If anybody that signs up gets you get matched up to $100. So if you put in 100, you'll get 100 back in your account. And if you deposit at least 10, you'll get into the Destination Devy Discord. You'll see some of these Underdog builds that everybody's doing, some of the strategies that we're trying to implement. So, just a lot of good value for, signing up under using our promo code.
You're lucky I love you, Gene. Using your promo codes on my show. Hey, that's fine. It's all fair game. Hey, it's okay.
I appreciate that.
Make sure you support you guys. You guys do great stuff. No.
I'm surprised you didn't cut them off.
Maybe
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at @just_Ike09, and everything Gene said, I echo. So you took the words out of my mouth.
No, make sure you guys check this out. Matter of fact, that's going to be your homework assignment. I like to give homework assignments here in the game plan. That is going to be the homework assignment. Check out the Off the Line Fantasy Football Podcast because you guys are awesome. I was a fan before I ever worked with you, collabed with you, or met you in person. So make sure you check out the Off the Line Fantasy Football Podcast on the Destination Devy Network. And you can find me. I'm at Matty Kiwoom on Twitter. please make sure you smash that like button on this video and follow the Player Profiler YouTube channel. Go ahead and follow our Player Profiler TikTok accounts at Player Profiler and Profiler_NFL. And if you love fantasy football, be sure to join the Player Profiler Discord, because we got me, Cody, a whole bunch of members from the underworld talking fantasy football 24/7. Check out the Trade Gods. Check out the Player Lounge with my man Cody Carpentier. Everybody that's listening, thank you for tuning in. Ike, Gene, thank you so much for coming to hang out with me for an hour and talk a little best ball. So keep game planning, my friends, and I will see you next week. Peace.